Let me tell you about the fourth session of this wonderful, yes, I have one more thing to tell you. जो दूसरा venue है वागड़ में we are going to start with this particular session. The man who could have prevented partition, Uday Mahurkar ji, will be in conversation with Abhilash Khandekar ji. The book is about on the Veer Savarkar. So आप में से जो लोग इस टॉपिक में इंटरेस्टेड हो वो वागड़ में जाके ये सेशन जरूर अटेंड करें. And let me, after the photograph is done, I'll request the authors and discussant for the fourth session to be here. Let me tell you the title. The title for the fourth session is Game India, Amul and Other Success Stories. And as author, we're delighted to have N Bhaskar ji. N Bhaskar ji will be in conversation with Shailaja Srinivasan ji. मैं चाहूंगा हम इन दोनों हस्तियों का स्वागत करें मंच पे. N Bhaskar ji and Shailaja Srinivasan ji. I would request all of you to please welcome them on stage. And I would request the rest of those to please be seated. This session is going to be about Game India, Amul and Other Success Stories. A book by N Bhaskar ji. And N Bhaskar is an educationist, researcher and journalist. Currently, he is the consulting editor, FPJ mentor and founder editor for AsiaConverge.com. He has been a journalist for over 40 years. He was consulting editor earlier with moneycontrol.com, firstpost.com, Forbes India and the DNA. He has been an educationist for almost 50 years and currently he teaches at management colleges in India and overseas. I would request the audience to please be seated so you can pay attention to the conversation and so you can pay attention to the briefs of two great people that we have on stage. I request everyone to please be seated down. In his book, Game India, 7 Strategic Advantages That Could Steer India to Wealth, the author reminds us that the India and China were historically wealth generators. On reading Game India, one realizes that the part of the reason for India's unsteady move towards economic rediscovery and its inability to focus on one of its inherent strengths, it is its people. And as the discussant for this session, we are happy to have Shailaja Srinivasan ji. She is a Bhopal-based editor with a passion for developing children's non-fiction books and she enjoys gardening in her spare time. Ma'am, we are delighted to have you and we are delighted to have Bhaskar sir as well. I would request you to please unveil the conversation. I would request the volunteers to pass on one cordless mic to our author as well. And I would request the others to please be seated.
Good afternoon and welcome. And I'm delighted to share the dais here with eminent journalist, educationalist, Sri N Bhaskar and a renowned author. We'll be talking today about his book, Game India, 7 Strategic Advantages That Can Steer India to Wealth. This book is, if you've had an opportunity to read it as yet, it's full of wonderful anecdotes and history and stories. And I'd like to request the author that you begin with an amazing anecdote, a story that you liked from Nani Palkhiwala's views on budget, a story about creation and God's attempt at parity. So I'd like you to please share that with our audience to begin the discussion.
Okay. This goes back many, many years when Nani Palkhiwala was alive. He was one of the finest jurists that India has ever got. He was a lawyer, he was a chartered accountant, and he was the chairman of ACC, the cement company. And what was amazing was, in those days when Doordarshan was the only television channel, nobody listened to the government's interpretation of the budget, and Palkhiwala would come every year, a couple of weeks after the budget, in Brabant Stadium in Bombay, and somewhere else in Delhi. I have never been to Delhi conferences. In Brabant Stadium, he would hold a meeting of people and would explain the budget clause by clause, telling them what was good for the country and what was bad for the country. I was an admirer, so every time he gave a budget speech, budget analysis, I used to go there and sit in Brabant Stadium on the ground. And one particular time, he said, this time let me begin with a story. And his story was about how God created man. The first part of the story was actually from D.H. Lawrence's book. And the story says God made man out of clay in his own image. And after the clay model was made, he put the clay model in the oven to bake. Unfortunately, he put it in the oven for a very long time. And the clay model came out crisp black. And God said, well, I don't like this, but I cannot undo what I've created. So he breathed his breath into the black clay model, and that became the black man. And then he said, I must do something better. Made a second clay model, put it in the oven, and took it out too soon. And then he said, well, I'm not too very happy with this, but let me see. I can't undo what I've created. So he breathed his breath into the model, and that became the white man. And then God said, no, I must do better this time. And he took the mean time between the two extremes, made another clay model, put it in the oven, and there came out a splendid brown model. And God said, this is perfect. One second. D.H. Lawrence's story ends here, but I must tell you what happens afterwards. So Nani Palkhiwala took the story and he added a little more. He said, so delighted was God with this brown model that he gave it all the qualities that he could think of. You'll be intelligent, you will be tenacious, you'll be this, you'll be that. And the white man and the black man got up his head. God, wait. You're supposed to be God. You're supposed to be impartial. You can't give it to them, to this brown man, and not leave us aside. And God said, yes, you're right. I should have been impartial, but I got carried away. But having given, I cannot take back. So I must now give this brown-skinned man a handicap. And he thought, and then he smiled, and he said, yes, I know. I shall give them the Indian government. It was one of the most endearing stories I'd heard. And whenever I talk to management students, if you look at Indians, they're brilliant. But the biggest handicap is, you know what?
So this book, as such as you put out, is in response to 3 questions that you have raised.
Okay.
Is the government really a handicap? The second question, who are the visionaries who have risen above every constraint the government or its laws have imposed?
Mm-hmm.
And 3, what can we learn from them to propel the Indian growth story forward? So,
okay, let me try. Is the government a handicap? Yes. If you look at a recent monograph brought out by ORF, Observer Research Foundation, on an average, there are 11,000 compliances for companies, of which about 6,000 invite jail penalties. You can't run a country with compliances and jail penalties. And the fact is, not many people go to jail, which means there's a settlement somewhere or the other. And every settlement involves a little bit of len-den. And The government can be a big handicap. It was a big handicap in licensing days. At other times, it has other kinds of handicaps. Yes, it has many handicaps. And if you can do business in India, you can do business anywhere.
And for the visionaries.
Okay. Who are the visionaries? There are lots of them in the book. I've mentioned several stories about visionaries, but I think in the presentation, we have two stories. This is my book, actually. And if you can go to the next slide. Okay. This is...
Comfortable enough?
No, I'm comfortable here as well. Okay. The first, once again, which is the first story?
The Amul.
Amul, okay. Fine. Okay. One of the most interesting stories was a story that I learned in the 90s. I went to Anand. Actually, it'd be good if I sit there because I can see the slide.
Certainly. Do you need a hand?
I have a problem with the legs. Yes. Okay. So, I went to Amul. I met Kurian. And in the evening, when Kurian loved a drink and he would talk about various things, Kurian was a great storyteller. And Kurian told me a story that changed my perspective about what was possible in India. It taught me strategic thinking. It was evening time, we were sitting together, and Kurian was saying, you know, in the next 10 years, 15 years, India will become the largest milk producer in India. Kurian saying it, I was the editor of one of the Indian Express publications at that time, and I nodded my head. Kurian looked at me, put his glass on the table, and says, "You bloody fool, why are you nodding your head like a cow?" I didn't know. So he said, "Ask me why." So I said, "Okay, tell me why." And he said, "How many people are there in India?" As I said, this is 1990s. And I said, "About 800 million. He said, "Right. What's the main food for the Indians?" I said, "Rice, wheat, vegetables. Some people eat meat." He said, "That's enough. The main food for Indians is rice and wheat." And you know what's remarkable to rice and wheat? For every kilo of rice and every kilo of wheat, you get 4 kilos of chaff, bhusa, the waste, the stalk. In India, you get food for the cattle as a byproduct. You don't have to grow it. In every other country, you have to grow food separately for cattle. Because it's a byproduct, India will remain the cheapest producer of milk in the world, provided two things are controlled. First, don't allow imports. Imports hurt farmers. If the prices go up, the farmer will produce more. And the second thing, he said, make sure the farmer gets money immediately. And what he did was, thanks to Lal Bahadur Shastri, he created an organization called NDDB. And through NDDB, he made sure that all imported goods, even in their gifts, went to NDDB. NDDB released them in the market at market prices, so the farmer's price did not go down. Milk prices in the last 60 years have never fallen down for milk cooperatives. Farmer knew that prices would go up and up, so he kept on having more and more cows and buffaloes, and he produced more milk. And India, by 2001, became the world's largest producer of milk. But there was another thing. He also said the farmer, in the 1950s when he started Amul, and there are many stories about Kurian, but in the 1950s, he had a big meeting of all his people and said, who is more important, the milk farmer, the farmer who produces milk from his cows and buffaloes? Is it the processor or is it the marketing guy? Globally, the farmer gets 1/3, the processor gets 1/3, and the marketing, distribution, procurement gets 1/3. Kurian said that's not good. The farmer is more important than everyone. If the farmer had not been there, there'd be no processor, there'd be no marketing man. He said the farmer must get at least 50%. The processor, the marketing guy says not possible. He said, then I don't need you. And he took up marketing and processing himself. Today, thanks to Korean, milk is the only agricultural product where the farmer gets 80% of the market price of milk. For the farmer, milk is the most profitable produce, except where there is no cooperative. And this is the argument I have with the government of India. Korean's philosophy has been there for the last 70 years in India. Yet, Uttar Pradesh, which is the largest milk producing state, does not have a cooperative. So while the farmer in Gujarat gets 30 rupees a litre, the farmer in Uttar Pradesh gets 16 to 18 rupees a litre. The farmer in Gujarat makes 2 rupees profit per litre of milk. The farmer in Uttar Pradesh makes 2 rupees profit on milk per litre. The farmer in Gujarat makes 2 plus another 15 rupees a litre as profits. So he makes 17 rupees. You want to double the farmer's income? Just start a cooperative in Uttar Pradesh. You will give him 17 times more income. But no, we have promoted middlemen. And Korean was against middlemen. India became the largest producer of milk because Korean eliminated middlemen in most parts of India except Uttar Pradesh. Okay. There's one more story. The next slide. Next. This is the same one. Same story. Okay. Let me tell you about this man. This is one of my favorite stories. Unfortunately, even management students are not taught this story. Sorry. It's about a doctor. It's about a boy who went to study medicine. His father was a school teacher in the village of Malpe in Karnataka. Malpe was a fishing village. This boy went to Bangalore, finished his MBBS, came back to the village, told his parents, I want to go to Japan for further studies. His mother was a very strong-willed woman, said, no, you will not go to Japan. He said, but I want to study more. I'm getting a scholarship. She said, no. You are a doctor now. You were born in this village. Please give back to the village your knowledge and make them grow. The boy was disappointed. After 6 months of working as a doctor in that village, in the fishing village, he realized this is terrible. All fishing villages, the only diseases you have is cold, fever, diarrhea, dysentery, nothing else. The intellectual challenge is not there, the money is not there. So he went back again to his mother to explain that I'm not growing intellectually, I'm not growing monetarily, why am I staying in this village? And his mother said, nothing doing, stay here. And the story is that this boy went back to sleep, crying in his pillow because his mother wouldn't understand him. And during one of his crying sessions, he got what is known as a eureka moment. And said, look, I am not getting money because the people can't get enough money, don't have enough money to pay me. Can I find some way to make the people around me make some more money? And that is where he started thinking, and he came across a brilliant strategy where, because he was a doctor, and typical for all doctors, little boys and girls, children are brought by the mothers, never by the fathers. Fathers are useless. But when he knew the mothers would bring the child, he would tell the mothers, what are you doing with this boy? You want him to stay in this fishing village? Let him go and study elsewhere. Save money for the child. And the women would, he knew that, what the woman would say, but he was just instigating them. and women can be instigated. So he told the women, save some money. The women said, where is the money to save? He said, why? Your husband gets fish, you make some money. Say, you know what my husband is? In a fishing village, typically the husband catches fish, brings it, the wife cleans the fish, sells the fish, manages the household, and the husband just takes whatever money is there and goes and drinks. Till the next fishing expedition. And then she said, you know my husband, he drinks. He says, look, can you save some money? He says, there's no money. He said, how much money do you have with you? And the women would open the pallu of the sari and show some change. And he would quietly take up a 25 paise coin. He says, can you save this? Initially the women thought that he was insulting them. He said, no, I'm serious. He took the 25 paise, pulled out 2 notebooks, one he gave her, one he kept to himself, wrote 25 paise in both notebooks. He says, if you don't withdraw that money for 3 years, I'll even give you interest on this money. What I will do is I'll send my compounder every day to your house when your husband is not there. See if you can steal 25 paise from your husband drinking money and give it to this man. The women are happy. 1, because they could steal from their husbands. And 2, because it was a good way of saving and they liked the doctor very much. So they started giving 25 paise, 25 paise, 25 paise to this man. In less than 6 months, the man found that he had almost about 1,000 rupees. I'm talking 1960s. 1,000 rupees equal to a lakh today. He says, look, I've got 1,000 rupees and I have to do something about it. So he went to phase 2 of his plan. Next time the woman would come with a child who had a cold. He said, the boy has a cold because he's not given good food. He can't live on fish and rice. So the women say, what will I do? He said, give it a glass of milk. Say, where's the money to buy milk? Doctor said, yes. Let me think of something. And to each woman he said, let me think of something. He already had the ideas, but after some time when the ideas settled in the women's mind, he told the women, look, next time the woman came, he said, look, I know what you should do. You should buy a cow. He said, I can't buy milk and you want me to buy a cow? He said, no, buy a cow. He said, how will I pay that back? In those days, people paid back. So, how do I buy a cow? He said, look, I will give you money to buy a cow. He said, how will I pay you back? He said, very simple. First glass of milk give to your child. The remaining milk I will buy. And I'll adjust that against a loan. So your child becomes healthy. You don't have any worries. I repay the loan. I clear off the loan against your name. The women suspected something wrong and most women did not listen to him initially. Till one woman said, okay, I will buy. And she went and bought a cow, and the children got a glass of milk. In less than 1 week, when the women saw that woman having a cow, they said, "Humko bhi gai chahiye." Within a few months, the entire village had cows, and now, poor man, he found that he had too much of milk to purchase. I didn't know what to do. So he started a milk cooperative, which till today is the largest milk cooperative in South India, the North Canara Milk Cooperative. And because of the milk, his collections became larger. And as his collections became larger, he realized that he had to start a bank. And so he started what is now known, what was then later, which later became the Syndicate Bank, which started its beginnings with 25 paise deposits known as pygmy deposits. Then he started a weavers cooperative. Wait. There's something more. Then he started a weavers cooperative, then he started a fishermen's cooperative, then he started a net cooperative. Almost about 20 different cooperatives. While Korean was doing that for milk in Gujarat, he was doing this in Canada, North Canada, Karnataka. Now having started a bank, he wanted good customers. So he'd go from city to city to look for good customers. And during one of his travels, he found a customer who wanted some money to buy some plastic. Gave him some money. Then he said, I can do more business if you allow me to import plastic. I said, okay, how much do you need? He said, so much. He knew this man was honest. He knew the man was paying his money. So he said, okay, I'll increase it to so much. And the trader went and bought some more plastic, imported it. And each time he paid off the banker very quickly. So one day the banker said, why are you importing plastic? Why don't you make the plastic in India? He said, the government won't let me. They won't give me a license. He said, you want a license for what? He said, I'm making yarn. He said, okay. I know someone in the government, come. And he went to Pranab Mukherjee, spoke to him, he got his license, and the first yarn factory was set up in India, large one, and that man became Dhirubhai Ambani. But the story began, you can't make money till the people around you make money. If they don't make money, you will not grow. Can you find a way to make people around you grow? And this way, you can find lots of stories in the book, but basically the idea is India has geniuses that have been able to grow in spite of the government. And I tell my students quite often, the difference in China and India is only one. In China, companies grow because of the government. In India, companies grow in spite of the government.
These are truly amazing stories of imagination, grit, and perseverance. You know, true visionaries. And I'm so glad that you recorded these stories because some of these otherwise would be truly lost.
In fact, we are going to lose the Syndicate Bank story because in 2020, the government closed down Syndicate Bank permanently. We've lost history. It's been merged with Canara Bank.
So, no, so it has a toehold and a placeholder in your book. So, I had a couple of questions about some of the other chapters. You know,
Okay.
you've talked about hobbled governance, but there is hope still. You've documented many facts about docket explosion, judges' vacancies, endless adjournments, government being a compulsive litigant. So the question is, like Dr. Kurian in milk cooperatives and Dr. Pai in banking and education, can there be a visionary in this sector to solve the basic problem for dispute resolution in India?
Can there be a visionary? Yes, there's a visionary every time. There's always some man. There's always some man. How much time do we have? Okay, then we take up that one. Okay. Every time there's a crisis, almost like the Bhagavad Gita, yada yada, there's always some man who comes up who knows how to beat the government at its own game. In the last 20 years, you've had Gautam Adani, who's changed India. I know that because I'm doing a book on him. The book will be released in 3 months' time. You have industrialists who have grown, but it is difficult. The government of India does not make things easy for businesses. As I said, if you can do business in India, you can do business anywhere.
And notwithstanding all the shortcomings, you have a tremendous sense of hope. So I'd like to explore that, and I'd like you to share your optimism with our audience.
Okay, my optimism comes in three things. If you want a society to change, you need good education, critical. Our school systems have collapsed across India. You need good health care. One major illness in a family, the family goes bankrupt. And lastly, you need a good judiciary. And there are two ways of looking at it. One, if the judiciary can be strengthened either through people's opinions or through a visionary, the judiciary in turn asks governments to invest more in education and in healthcare. Will it happen? The history of the world shows yes, it will happen. All developed countries had robber barons in the past, and then the robber barons themselves realized the need for good laws, and they finance the government to bring in good laws. So you bribe a government to stop bribery. Okay. This has happened the world over, and if you go by history, that's a good thing. There's a second lesson thing which impresses me, and that's something from India. Can we take the last slide in this one? Go ahead. Go ahead. Yes. You're familiar with this image. Madhya Pradesh is Shiva country. Many people worship Lord Shiva. And one of the finest expressions of the Lord Shiva is the Nataraja. The Nataraja is big. He's the Lord of dance. He's the Lord of culture, the Lord of creativity. And you can't learn dance unless you've gone through years of practice. There's discipline behind every dance. Most people are familiar with this dance, but I'm going to talk about things that they're not familiar with, or most people are not familiar with. Yes, like all Natarajas, there's a ring of fire. When Shiva dances, all the three worlds vibrate, pulsate with energy. Yes, his arms. One arm has the damru. After you've learned the discipline, after you've gone through all the steps, don't follow other people's music. You set the music and you dance to your own music. A third hand holds fire. Fire which purifies, and fire which also cleanses, destroys. And the fourth hand is in the dance mudra. But most people do not watch what the feet are doing. Right at the bottom of Nataraja is always a child whom Nataraja is crushing to death. It looks gruesome. Nobody likes a child being crushed to death. Till you realize that the child is Apasmasura, the demon of ignorance. Ignorance is like a small child begging for mercy. जाने दो यार, उसे मालूम नहीं था. But ignorance is the father of all crime. It must be crushed. But there's a second lesson which is important. If you always watch the Nataraja, you'll find that while one leg is crushing the demon of ignorance, the other leg is upraised. Because the purpose of life is upliftment. The purpose of life is lifting yourself and lifting others. This was always there in our culture. We've forgotten it. We don't destroy ignorance. We don't uplift ourselves and others. That is a cause for optimism. If we go back to our roots, it's there in our roots. We've just forgotten it.
That was beautiful. Thank you. I'd like to turn the mic over to the audience if there are any questions.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Vartul Singh. Sir, you told the story about Mr. Kurian. Mr. Kurian devised the ways as to and made the farmers prosper. But did he propose any method of what happens to the milching cows after they have stopped producing milk? And the biggest problem in UP these days, thanks to the present dispensation, is the farmer earlier used to clandestinely, he used to sell the cows and the bulls away to wherever, to the hide factories or to Bangladesh or whatever this thing. There used to be a very ready market for that. But now, the same cows, the same bulls are being, now they are becoming Bhasmasur for the farmers themselves.
You see, this is where, when you bring ideology into business, you destroy that ideology, you destroy business. I had a meeting with the Gaurakshak Samiti chiefs in Delhi. There's a whole chapter on milk and even cattle slaughter. And the Gaurakshak said, आपने किताब में लिखा कि हमें उनका बैन नहीं करना चाहिए. मैंने कहा, yes, I said you should not ban it. इसे गलत है. ऐसे क्यों गलत है भाई? इसे गौ अपनी माँ के जैसे है. मैं कहा रुको, इससे मैं माँ को नहीं खरीदता हूं, मैं गाय खरीदता हूं ना. जहां खरीदारी आती है वहां व्यापार आता है. आप व्यापार और रिश्तों में कंफ्यूज हो रहे जरा. I said, if you want to ban cow slaughter, ban it. But the farmer used to earn 20,000 from selling the old cow, give him 20,000. You can't bring a law without compensation. That's wrong law. That's wrong practice. The farmer would take the 20,000, the farmer would borrow 20,000 more, and at 40,000 buy a new cow or a new buffalo. Now the 20,000 is gone. He can't take the risk of buying another one with 40,000 loan, so he does not buy it. His capital has shrunk. Secondly, when you have an old cow to look after, the old cow, like all old people, has more ailments and diseases and complaints. He ends up spending more, his income goes down. Now UP has agreed that they'll give 900 rupees a month for looking after the old cow, but they've not agreed to give 20,000 rupees as compensation to the farmer. So you make the middleman strong and you make the farmer weak. And the last point here, when I export anything, it's called exports. When a man exports his buffalo or his cow to Bangladesh, it is smuggling. The man is getting money now. What does difference does it make? We export meat, we export fish, we export poultry. Why do you distort business logic? You want to ban cows, fine, but let buffaloes continue. You block a buffalo van and then you say it's cow's meat. You send it for forensics when forensics is not even available for human beings. And you keep the van out for 2 hours, the meat gets stale, the trader has lost his meat. You don't compensate him. This is where, when ideology starts interfering with religion, with business, you distort ideology, you distort business.
Thank you, sir. We'll move towards the second question. Volunteer himself, Harsh, has a question. Harsh, please go ahead.
Hello, sir. My name is Harshvardhan. Sir, I have a question. So, question ये है कि आपने स्टोरी सुनाई कि वो धीरूभाई अंबानी से मिले, उन्होंने बैंक खोली, कॉर्पोरेशंस करी. आपने ये स्टोरी नहीं, आपने ये नहीं बताया कि आपको स्टोरी कैसे पता चली या आप उस पर्सन से कैसे मिले.
मैं उसे बिजनेस इंडिया में था और हमारे मालिक काफी दयालु थे. बोले भास्कर तूने बहुत काम किया, छुट्टी ले. तो मैंने कहा ठीक है, काम. मैंने कहा मैं मणिपाल के पाइस के ऊपर स्टोरी ले. इसे स्टोरी ले, टेक योर फैमिली ऑल्सो विथ यू. So he paid my family's airfare. I was in business India. Ashok Advani was my boss. He allowed me to go to Manipal. I had a lovely 1-week stay there. But that's another story. But while I was there, I met Ramesh Pai. And because Syndicate Bank helped Ambani's, till the day Ramesh Pai died, some member of the Pai family was always a director on the Ambani board. And then there, while staying there, I got all the details, all the old documents from the Pais about the Pai family. For Korean, I used to go to Anand very often. I even teach at Anand at Irma. And I picked up a lot of information. So wherever I've done stories, I've actually gone there and picked up information. Okay?
Okay, next question please. And please, apna question crisp rakhega. We are running out of time.
Hello.
It's completely fine, sir.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Nitya Singh Chauhan. So my question is, your thoughts are that Indian government is handicapping our business leaders. So I want to know your views regarding the privatization of government assets. Like what impact it's going to have and how it is going to change our Indian economy. Thank you, sir.
Look, inevitably, there's a Gujarati saying, jahan sarkar vyapari, tyahan praja bhikhari. Okay? The government's job is to look at government and make regulations and regulate. Don't get into business.
Yeah, next question please.
So this is Sanjeev, right?
Yeah.
So you have shown the Nataraja picture. So on the same, I have come across a lot of Rajas who are not NUT, I would say. So based on that, there is one dilemma which always comes in terms of the values. So the creator of a company or the founder have certain values. So are those values and the organization values have to be same, or the company can have its own value set and it's okay to differ?
Look, business changes from time to time. If you have started a company and your children don't agree with that value, then maybe it has to change. But what we have not learned is how to institutionalize business so that the core activity goes in without ownership. You separate management from ownership, you will do wonders. We've not learned that art as yet. It has, even our laws have not promoted that very much. So with the result, when the children start fighting over the company, look at the Ambani brothers fighting. Look at the Ranbaxy story. Look at half the stories of Indian corporates. It's division, division, division. You need to grow. And if there's a vision, you want to protect that vision, separate management from ownership. Keep the ownership in a trust, do anything, but management has to be core professionals. That's my belief. Maybe I'm wrong.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, ma'am, for such an insightful discussion. I would now request Raghav Chandra, sir, to please go ahead and felicitate the author and the discussant for this session. This painting is the official mascot of Bhopal Literature and Art Festival 2022. The painting is based on tribal art created by Padma Shri Bhuri Bhai ji. And we have, yes, that calls for an applause. Bhaskar ji. And we also have a mug as a symbol of representation of our love and respect for our discussant Shailaja ji. Thank you so much.